Good afternoon to you at home at this hour on the business desk. The Prudential Authority has justified its move to apply for the liquidation of Ithala Bank in the best interest of its over 250,000 depositors. The authority, which operates under the Reserve Bank, says this will allow the appointed liquidator to use insolvency legislation to recover and distribute their funds. In response, Ithala has accused the repayment administrator of issuing an unjust order prior for it to stop accepting deposits and processing withdrawals. Meanwhile, National Treasury has come forward with a guarantee to financially protect depositors from the legally insolvent financial service provider. Independent analyst Sinesipho Maninjwa speaks to us about these developments. Thank you so much for your time. It's a very interesting case, given that it has been a long time coming from the case that was brought by the Prudential Authority warning Ithala Bank from as early as 2022, and we saw a subsequent order in 2023, and now in 2025 there's this application. What's to be said about what happens next, especially the point of success where the Reserve Bank's Prudential Authority is in terms of seeking this application?
All right, then. Firstly, thank you so much for your time. Firstly, I'd like to do a slight correction. Ithala is not a bank. So let's just get into the definitions. Ithala was operating under a specific exemption that allowed it to take deposit, be a deposit-taking institution in lieu of them commencing with the process to apply for a commercial banking license. So that is where they are. As you have well mentioned, this process has been long underway, and there have been numerous engagements between the regulator as well as the management of the bank regarding this particular matter for the past few years. And the reason why that the regulator has brought forward this liquidation application on the basis that they're trying to protect the deposit base is the fact that the bank, as per the financial information and as per their financial statements, as well as the review undertaken by the repayment administrator in terms of the solvency report, that their liabilities far exceed their assets, and there is a potential shortfall, meaning that the depositors are at risk at not being able to access their funds. It is also important to note that the number of depositors, which is the purpose of this whole action, is 257,000 people. Most of these 257,000 people are predominantly Black, and they are I would say, to lower to middle class. And there are definitely an underserviced market when you look at the commercial banking landscape in South Africa. Now, I've seen the mixed responses, specifically as it relates to the economic freedom fighters, Ithala themselves, as well as the public sector union and KZN. And I could see their response and some of their concerns, but ultimately, we always have to think of what is best for the deposit base. Now, we remember what happened at VBS. We remember what has happened in previous banking collapses, like as your African Bank, as well as your likes of your Sambo Bank. It is about protecting ultimately the depositors and they're being able to recoup their funds. The PA in this case, if you read some of the statements and some of the rhetoric, has been accused of targeting Black-owned financial institutions. While that may appear that way, I have to remind people that Ithala is owned by the KZN provincial government. And one of the requirements of the PA was that the Ithala is able to guarantee deposits. They said for every R1 deposit, Ithala must have 0.75 guarantee, which is 75% guarantee. And in one of the affidavits signed by the CEO himself, he did state that they're unable to have that guarantee, and the KZN provincial government declined to provide that specific guarantee because they do not have the funds,
Yeah.
which is why the National Treasury is stepping in to guarantee the depositors. That's why you see the link of National Treasury in this.
And I'd like us to talk about that particular process of the National Treasury having offered a guarantee. It should be a relief, but if we go back to the scenario around VBS, I think at the time it was Nedbank that stepped forward to say that they are able to basically put surety for those depositors, but it had a benchmark in terms of how wide and how far they can go in buffering those who were potentially going to lose money. In this case, it's different, though. It's the National Treasury. How much scope do they have in this regard?
So remember, with that one specifically, it was still government who bailed them out. Remember, Nedbank was just the facilitating agent. And VBS they guaranteed up to a specific amount. If I'm not 100% correct, I think the amount was up to 30,000 Rand. So if you had less than 30,000 Rand, you were able to recover all your monies. If you had more than that, you would have to take a loss. And they're still trying to recoup those excesses through that liquidation, that insolvency process as well. Now, with this case, because of the fact that Ithala is 100%, it is an SOC. So it is owned by the provincial government and therefore the actual national government, if you roll it up, they have to guarantee in this case. VBS was not owned by the government, was not a shareholder in VBS, but in this case, they are a shareholder and they're guaranteeing 100%. Now, the interesting point that the Ithala management team do raise in their statement is the timing of this. Now, when you put forward this liquidation application, the problem is that you transfer the funds to an account and there's a process in order for depositors to be able to claim the funds they had put into Ithala. This can take time. And if you factor in where we are in January with the opening of the school year and the opening of parents have responsibilities and also understanding the market in which Ithala services, which is predominantly low income grant recipients, pensioners, etc.
Yeah.
I do understand the frustration because it means that, for example, if you had money in the bank, in your Ithala bank account today, you actually wouldn't be able to access it. And if you have to buy groceries, and the claiming back process is not going to happen immediately. So I do understand the frustration of them raising that point, and that is a valid point. However, in the calculation done in terms of solvency and liquidity, there is a shortfall. There is a real shortfall. And currently, if the bank were to, not the bank, I said the financial institution, I do forget, were to have to repay back the depositors today, they wouldn't be able to. So it is a real risk, and it's not something that we're able to run away from. What I do find quite concerning, and it is quite concerning, is that the PA was very, very clear in terms of what are the requirements in order for Ithala to be able to obtain their commercial banking license, and they have not been able to meet those requirements. They include instances of non-compliance with your FIC and AML, issues with IT systems that were procured, there was unauthorized expenditure, issues with high staff vacancies and not having the correct skills, issues with compliance monitoring, issues around, so Ithala has a bit of a loan book. And one of the concerns, if you read through the court documents, is that there are issues around the security thereof, meaning that the shortfall that is calculated could be slightly higher, meaning the government has to step in far more. Now, again, this is it on the back of the fact that the government, part of National Treasury's policy was, I think, 2 years ago, and the minister did indicate that government is going to be looking at no longer putting money in SOCs.
Yes.
And this goes contra to that. So it's a bit of a quagmire in that I do believe personally that Ithala needs to exist and there needs to be found a solution. But I do believe that we need to do things the right way because ultimately it is people's money, it is people's life savings, and that we need to protect them at all costs.
Absolutely.
And that there should be they should be our number one priority.
Thank you so much for that well-rounded input. It's definitely a long way to go before this matter reaches finality, and we'll keep our eye on the moving parts around these developments. Thank you so much for your time. Sinesipho Maninjwa is an independent analyst talking us through the latest when it comes to the Ithala as a financial service organization, and the Prudential Authority having requested for an application to liquidate that particular SOC.